Okay, so anyways, hi Brandon.
Hello.
I just want to say thank you for coming today. I know this is for a bigger purpose. So I'm just gonna get straight to the conversation. And the first question that I have for you is when you think about the definition of a man, what comes to your mind?
Great question. And I think one that I'm still trying to answer myself. I know it's kind of shifted and changed, I would say, in the past, even more than 10 years or so. Um, but yeah, just looking at, I guess, how history is moving forward in terms of like, when like men went off to war and women had to hold down the house and started working in the workforce and making their own income. And, there's this whole topic of chivalry, um, and splitting bills and who's cooking and who's taking care of the children. And, so I feel like, for me personally, again, great question. And again, one that I'm still trying to answer myself. And
You're
I
still
just
exploring.
still exploring. I
Yeah.
would just try to encourage everybody to understand that at the root of both men and women, there's still this child inside all of us, and that no matter our age or what we look like externally, inside we all have feelings and we all want kind of the same thing, which is just to be happy, be at peace. And yeah, whether somebody wants to drive trucks or be a nurse or be a daycare worker or whatever they choose to decide, whatever they choose to do, doesn't make them more or less of a man.
Okay, yeah, that's
Um,
true. I agree.
if you identify as a man, and yeah, for me, it's just, are you taking care of your responsibilities?
Yeah.
Are you?
I have a slip in there. Do you think that because you had said that find that it has changed over the years, right? How do you find that the definition and the changes of a definition of a man has had an impact on a man's mental wellness? Like, do you find that there right now in society, just and a general observation, do you find that they are going into that change smoothly, or do you think that there's pressure that's adding pressure and sometimes stress that may be impacting their mental wellness?
So I think that from what I observe, and this is, I'm speaking from my personal experience, obviously, but like seeing the father figures that I grew up with, um, they were dealing with a lot, and I'm gonna assume that they were doing the best that they could with what they had. But I really think that lit a fire under whoever they raised. So myself, my cousins. Like when I see my cousins, and I'm talking specifically with fatherhood. When I see us parenting, it's very different than the figures that we were raised.
What's different about it?
Somebody somebody asked me, because they gave me a compliment that meant very, like, I hold it very in high
Dear to your heart,
regards.
yeah.
Is that they said, "Oh, like you're a good father. Where did you? How did you learn?" And I get I chopped it up to a lot of the father figures that I saw on TV. So specifically Philip Banks, my all time favorite. Philip Banks. When I think of a great father, that is the one. For anybody who's not watching, Philip Banks was a father from the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. So seeing him, his parenting style, and just the strong presence that he had as a man, as a father, as a leader. So for me, that was kind of the role model. And then I heard somebody else say that you are the adult or you're the parent that you needed when you were younger. So that really resonated with me too, because I was like, man, I wish I was raised by myself. Like, like I was my father type thing.
But would you say it's fair to say that we only know better because we knew what we didn't like
Yes.
and we wanted, yeah.
Yes.
Because
So,
I sometimes I see it like when I'm not a parent, but I definitely work with parents and families. But I see that, people like I wanted to be the parent that I didn't have. But I also feel that sometimes we have to look for the need too.
right,
Our kids' needs are really important,
right, right, exactly.
But yeah, continue what you're saying.
So, like, yeah, all children are different. Like, it doesn't matter the parents or like the environment that they grow up in. They're gonna have a different personality. So, all children are different. But what I was gonna say is that like I I like my parenting style. Obviously, I'm learning. It's my first child, and there's lots to learn. And but one of the things that I do that I like that I do is like I'm quick to apologize. Like I'll tell him like, "Hey, Dad made a mistake. I'm sorry for doing this. I'm sorry for yelling. I'm sorry for losing my patience. It's not your fault." And growing up, I just felt like if my parents got upset, it was my fault, and there was no apology or no admitting fault or anything like that. So yeah, like I said, I'm gonna assume that everybody is doing the best that they can with the tools that they have at that moment. And yeah, so just observing my parents and role models on TV and neighborhood and teachers and coaches and just taking all of that, saying, okay, I like this, I don't like that, I don't like that.
So because of your role models, now you're able to parent more effectively. And you feel as like how does that connect with you as a man in your fatherhood and you as a man? Like does it make you feel like you're more of a man because you got it? Like or like,
So I won't say that I got it.
or you're
I'm
getting
say
it?
I'm learning. Yeah, I'm learning. I want to. I'll still try. And every stage of parenting is different, and I'm gonna have to learn tools like when he was a newborn baby versus toddler versus when he starts elementary, high school. You know, talks about dating and sex and all that stuff. And it's very different. Like I've given a sex ed talk to kids in high school, and I know it's going to be different than talking to
To your
my
kid,
son.
yeah,
You
for
know what I
sure.
mean?
It's personal.
It
You're
is
like, I don't
very
want you to do
personal,
that.
exactly. And then if universe willing, I have a daughter, I know that's going to be different too, right? So it's going to be different from like talking to these children versus my child versus my son versus my daughter. So all that. Even I have nephews that I feel like I need to be their father figure because their father's not present. Um, and so
So, just to say, so you, a father, would you say that being a good father is a part of a definition of the manhood, like going
yes,
into your manhood? Yeah.
whether you have children or not, I think so. Like if you
Oh,
have any time you are in a position where people are looking up to you. So I had, like I said, I have nephews, and I had nephews even before I had my son. And I would say, like, I know they're looking up to me. I know they're watching what I do, what I say, and it's still not a concept that the adults in my not the adult, but the older generation in my family grasps yet. Because when we're at Thanksgiving dinner, like you'll hear the older generation curse, and then you'll hear my generation say, "Hey, watch your language," or "Watch your," you know what I mean? And I just found it funny because like this is what we grew up with. They like those adults haven't changed, but we knew that it was wrong, and we don't want our children to adopt those same habits and stuff like that.
so
So
anywhere where you feel you could be, so you're basically saying you don't need to, as a man, you don't need to be a father to father.
no,
Yeah.
no.
So a role for you as a man is leadership.
Right. Like I consider my high school guidance counselor a father figure, coaches that I've had father figures.
How do you find the leadership though when you're growing into your manhood if you don't have the example? Like I get it that you Like you have people that you look up to, but do you think it's important that it has to be someone that's relatively close to you?
That is your that
Yeah,
is
like
leading
say
you
for
type thing.
example, there's people that don't have fathers, don't have a
Right.
strong family dynamics like
Right.
that. Like where do you feel that that support should come from?
But again, you turn on the TV and you'll like there's movies where you'll see parenting figures, there's TV shows, sitcoms where you'll see parenting figures. So you adopt all these things, but even as cartoon character like things that we watch cartoons growing up. I'm more into cartoons now, but I'm trying to think if there was any cartoons that I was
I think No, I didn't even know about Mr. Jessup because I wasn't too sure about him.
But I was a big fan. I am a big fan of Marvel. So X-Men. I don't know if you ever watched X-Men before, but Professor X was kind of a father figure to all these characters and taught a lot of great values and stuff like that. So as a kid, you're watching for the action, but subconsciously you're taking out all of these lessons and stuff like that. And I watched it the other day with my son. Not with my son. I watched it by myself because I wanted to see if it was age appropriate for my son. But listening to like all the dialogue, and I'm like, man, those were really great life lessons. They talk about like confidence and struggles and not giving up and stuff like that.
Yeah. So leadership, and what's another? Give me two more words that really defines what you're learning so far, because you said you're still learning. The definition of a man. Because I think the reason why I asked that because I find that right now society is always talking about high level this, low level this, whatever the case may be, and I find like it's misconstrued. Like people are either one extreme to the next, and it's like where do you find that balance? Like does a man mean anything that society says? Does a man mean what you've learned to grow as? Like so where do you when you were thinking about manhood, like you said leadership, but what are some other things that you could say that you're learning that really helps you to grow into your manhood?
Honestly, I think just the ability to think for yourself, like, doesn't mean because somebody says something that you have to believe or adopt that. And I'll give you a prime example. When I was younger, prepubescent, I played football and I never really liked it. It was too physical for me. Like I don't enjoy getting hit, especially when it's cold outside. Like when it's warm, it's not that bad, but when it's cold and like you're cold and you get hit, like it hurts more. So whatever, my friends played football, so I was like, okay, I'll play. And then people went through puberty and they got stronger and they got faster and they hit harder. And so one time I took a hit and I got up and I had a headache. And I said, that's it. I'm not playing football no more. If I adopted society's definition of a man, I would be like, oh, which is like you don't complain, pain is gain, go out and hit the next guy even harder and yell and be macho and exactly ignore the headache and the pain and all this stuff and so that's society's definition of a man. And it didn't work for it. That doesn't work for me. I don't enjoy it. It wasn't for me. So exactly. So I stopped playing football and I started playing basketball, and it worked for me. I enjoyed it a lot more. And
So I get the sense that you, from a young age, you were trying to develop your own understanding. So with whatever everyone's saying now, because I'm sure you're aware of like that, like how do you feel men are receiving those new definitions of what a man is to be? Because prior, and I asked this to somebody else, back in the day, it was provide, protect. And provide and protect mean, aggressive, not showing no emotion. And now, especially in relationships, it becomes, I could only talk about heterosexual relationships, So it becomes for the woman, it's like, but yes, you could provide and protect, but there's other things that you have to give to a relationship. So how do you think men have adapted to those changes?
I think because we've been doing that for so long, I still feel like it's deeply ingrained. And I don't think protection will ever change.
No, we don't want it to.
No, I don't think anybody like, like if somebody like if I feel like somebody is threatening, especially my son, like I I like I won't even think, like it's just like protect, you know what I mean? If I feel like somebody breaks in, and I was actually having a conversation with somebody, it's like I instinctively will sleep on the side of the bed that's closest to the door because I feel like if something happens, like I'm there or whatever the case is. Like I don't think anybody in this day and age will break in, or like if they do, it's specific to a certain situation. But like going back, like if people are sleeping outside or in the forest or whatever, and you have to protect your family from whatever, and you're in a hut, yeah, you'll probably sleep by the door. But like I said, I feel like that is carried into our day and age. Like men are stronger, men are faster. So it only makes sense. Yeah, physically, yes. So it only makes sense that will be protectors. Now, providers, in my opinion, because people are both genders are working, that I think is shared. But again, with that, maybe even cleaning is shared, raising children is shared, all that stuff. So I think that kind of is balancing out. And honestly,
Do
like
you think that the balance is, how do you feel about the balance?
I feel good about the balance. I personally like I don't mind cooking and cleaning, and I think when I see a man pushing a stroller or playing with his kids at the park or dropping his kids, I'm like, man, like I tip my hat, like good for you. Um, that for me is like that's being a man. Like you're there for your kid, or showing them certain things, or being that positive voice in their head so that when they grow up they can still talk to themselves with that positive voice, and you're just reinforcing.
Because a lot of people are, that's the gender wars right now. A lot of people, I find that because the shift of definition has added, the definition of a man, things have been added to it. I think that a lot of people are like you sound extremely balanced with it. You're cool with that shift. There's some people that are not cool with that shift. And I find that mentally, even some of the statistics that I've read, like they're saying that women now are more in the work field. It's not that men don't want them there, but it's like, how do I adapt to that? You know what I'm saying? And how is that affecting their mental health? But you are definitely like, I get the vibe that you're like, you're cool with it, But there's a lot of people that I find are struggling with that transition. And some people don't have to transition. They don't have to if they don't want to. But I just feel overall that's affecting certain men's mental wellness. And the thing is, like, how do we find solutions to the people that are struggling? What can you speak on that?
Well, I would just try to figure out kind of what area they're struggling in, and also, I mean, it's tough because especially if you're like if you have a bunch of older siblings, chances are you've never had to clean or cook. Like it will either go from like the parents to first child, second child. So by the time you're fourth or fifth child, maybe the first time you ever end up cooking is when you move out to maybe university, or you know what I mean. So like I've had conversations with guys that are like, yeah, I never cook. I don't know how to cook. I don't enjoy cooking. But I've also had conversations with women that,
Don't
they
cook.
don't cook. They don't like cooking.
Yeah.
So if these two people, start a relationship, they're either going to have to learn how to cook, or it's going to be like really expensive to, eat out often. So
Yeah. Relationships.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to kind of balance each other out. And like, I don't know, like it's tough because
I think it's whatever works for people.
yeah,
But I do believe that me personally, I believe that I do believe that men provide and protect. And I also believe that with the new, I don't think that men only had those two definitions. I think that they've always been there. And I think there's been always more definitions, but because society depicted men like that, they weren't able to explore those type of other emotions and other connections that they could make as a man to their woman, to their families, to their friends, right? So now that, especially me as a woman, we're like, okay, well, I have an emotional side, can you attend to my emotional side? Men are like, yo, what the hell? Like, but it's challenging them to go a little bit deeper, which some people are not familiar with. But I do believe that when they're like, men are supposed to be like that, yeah, they are supposed to be like that. But there's other parts because we're all human. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not just one way, So, and I really, the goal with like this conversation and other conversations is that I want to encourage men as a woman, if I could do that much encouraging, but I want to encourage men that to explore those other things, because men, I find when they grasp something, they get it. They go with it. They could make it, they have a car, they want to super the car looks good. So if we could put that into our emotions, if we could put that into other areas in our lives, as other areas in their lives as men, how could you create a healthier foundation in the home? How can we create healthier communities? You know what I'm saying? And then the relationships that we have, it goes into our relationships. So now when you think of man and woman in a relationship and how men showing up in relationships right now, I find that there is a decline. Like, I don't know if you agree or you don't agree, but what is your take on that with men showing up in the relationship?
I agree that there is a decline. Like and I'm sad to say that like I'm seeing a lot of families that are no longer together, including my own. Um, and I feel like it would help a lot. And part of the work that I do is trying to get men into, especially men of color, into spaces where like they're practicing yoga or taking care of their mental health or opening up. Because I feel like the woman, and this is even if it happens, because I'm not even sure if it happens or not, but it happens for me. Like before I was into the wellness space, my therapist was always the girl that I was seeing at the time. Like that's who I would open up to. That's who I would talk about my feelings with and stuff like that. But like come to realize that like after a certain while that might get heavy for this person and they might not have the tools to even make sure that they can digest what I'm telling them.
Yeah.
And then
Or be able to give you that support that you
that
need.
support, exactly,
Yeah.
like tool, whatever. So my therapy sessions have always been pillow talk. And now like moving forward, I don't want to burden somebody with that. And if I do expect a certain level of emotional support, and I will also be that for them.
But before you weren't too privy to all this.
No, it
Yeah.
was just like I have this stuff, I feel this way, and I don't know how to deal with it. And so I'm gonna, share that with you.
So how did you get to the point where you shifted your perspective?
Yeah,
Or
just again starting to kind of do my own inner work, going to therapy, doing yoga, stuff like that, meditation, and making sure that if I do share an experience, I've done the work that I needed to do so that it's not so much sharing a wound, but more like a scar. It's like it's still there, but it's healed to a certain extent instead of like a wound that's fresh or whatever the case is. And even if something happens that is like, fresh, it's just asking the person, like, are you okay? Like, or this is happening.
checking in before
Yeah,
you
before,
do,
yeah.
yeah.
Like, I don't know what kind of day you had and if you can even hear me out because you might
Communication.
have, something that you're dealing with.
Communication. That's a
Yeah.
big, very important factor in relationships. Yeah.
Huge,
And
huge in
how do you,
relationship.
do you feel you're a good communicator?
I am I think I'm a good communicator. I have no problem telling a person what I need, my needs, my expectations. I am
Were
a
you always
secure
like that?
attached. Um, no, no, I think it's something that I've recently developed, and
Recently, like a year, 2 years, 5 years?
I would say in the last, yeah, I would say during my past relationship, and I've had conversations with this individual, and she told me that she was always envious that I could so easily express what I needed, and she had challenges around that. And I never understood that because I've always felt like I've tried my best to make it a safe space for her to open up. And, I was like, what's wrong? Let's talk, let's do this. And it was always challenging for her. But me, like, no, if something's bothering me, like, I don't want to hold it in. I'm going to tell you, and hopefully we can try to find some sort of solution. Because if not, what will inevitably happen is like people are going to start resenting each other,
Yeah.
and stuff
Resentment
like
is a
that.
big reason for,
Yeah.
whew, I've definitely been resentful a few times because, like, do
Yeah.
you hear me?
Yeah.
I just said that.
Yeah.
Like, you're
Exactly.
listening, but you're not understanding.
Right. Exactly.
I'm just like, but I think that I, when I think back to relationships, I could say to myself that I wasn't probably the best communicator all the time because I know as women, we could get into our emotions, and some women, they either or they shut down. And I think that I'm the and when I too much, I'm just like, nah, I'm tired now. I'm shutting down. And even that's not a good form of communication either. But it's definitely a growing process. It's not going to get any easier if we don't put in the work. So you had said something. You said that you put in the work.
Right.
What does the work look like?
For me, it was a lot of journaling, self-reflection. Yeah, I just saw the trajectory that my life was going on, and it was ultimately a combination of the same trajectory my parents' lives are on. Yeah. And when I was younger, I remember saying that I didn't want to be on that trajectory, and was very, very judgmental of them. And it was very humbling to now see it's like, okay, it's not so black and white. You know what I mean? Like things happen that shape how you see the world, and the decisions you make and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, now that I have this information, what am I going to do with it? And who am I going to be? How am I going to change and stuff like that? So I did a lot of um, inner work, self-reflection, journaling, and stuff like that.
Can I ask, do you remember the pivotal, like the point where you were just, not the pivotal, the point where you were just like, I got to do the work? Because I asked that because I did the work too, but I also know that like some people, like I could see because I did the work and I'm doing the work that where people are starting, where they're in the middle. Yeah, I think I'm closer to the end, but the end could still look kind of long. You know what I'm saying? So what was that point for you where you're just like, yo, I gotta
Figure this out.
figure this shit out?
Yeah. So it was the second time I was in prison. So I went in, I came out on parole, and then something happened where I breached my parole, and I went back to prison. And at that point, again, because my father was always in and out. Yeah. And I was always just, oh man, this guy can't learn his lesson. Why is he not home? He's not here. I have to be the man in the house. Oh, he's a waste, all this stuff. Very judgmental growing up. And here I find myself in the same situation. So I was like, ho, 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 ho. Not so fast. Like, what's going on? Like you had 12 conditions for almost 4 years before you went in your first time. You get out, you have 3 conditions and you breach 7 months in. Like, what's going on? It's easy conditions, easy conditions. And so, yeah, I got a pen and paper and I started doing that journaling and introspection, that inner work. Realized that like I didn't take responsibility for any of what was going on in my life. All the good stuff I would take responsibility for, easy. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I did that. I said that. That was a great idea. That I did. Yeah, yeah. All the bad stuff, it was always someone else's fault. Always someone else's fault. But the thing is that like I was the only one in the prison cell, right?
Mm-hmm.
My father wasn't there, my mom wasn't there, this person wasn't there, the police weren't there, so, this girl wasn't. It was only me. So at that realization, I was like, okay, yeah, it was me, and it's been me all along. Like all the like thoughts and actions and lying and this and that, and it's always been me, and I have to now find a way to let go of all the anger and resentment that I'm holding on because it's not hurting anybody else but me. And I see the quality of life. Like I'm fortunate enough to see how holding on to that stuff will lead you down a certain path because I see the adults around me and I'm like, man, no, I deserve a better quality of life and I want to have that. So yeah, I got to change.
Let's start doing the work.
Yeah, start doing the work. So that was the moment. Came home, and at that realization, I got very depressed, very sad, because I was like, fuck, like I've been messing up my life. I've hurt so many people in the process. I put my life at risk. You know how many people don't make it out of prison? A lot of people don't make it out of prison, and at that realization, I was like, oh man, like I'm really like I'm sad. There's no hope. Like I have a record. I'm like all of this stuff. I can't get jobs that I want to work in that I feel like I'm good at. Dream job for me, dream job, and I'm happy I got a brief moment was youth protection. For me, that was something that I always wanted to do, and I was able to do that before I got a record, and now I don't really see myself ever being able to do that work.
So what do you do?
You pave your own path, and it's not easy, and yeah, you strap up your boots and you look at your hand and you see, okay, these are cards that I have, and let me start, and get out there, do some yoga, see who rocks with it,
Yoga
and
instructor here.
yeah, you get your certification, and you build your brand, and what's cool with that is I feel like people who've known me before, like they see a certain person, and now people who meet me now see a completely different person. And one of the biggest compliments and nicest things that anybody has ever told me is a childhood friend. We've known each other since the age of like 12, 13 years old, grade 7 up until today. And he said, I don't even recognize this guy. And I was like, oh, that is great, because the person who I was before was not someone that I'm proud of, but
We'll say a hot mess.
hot
A
mess.
hot mess.
Hot mess. Yeah, exactly.
But the growth process is truly beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm grateful
And
for
I
it. Yeah.
really wish that on every single, especially for the men.
Yeah.
The women, we've been doing the work for so long. Like
Yeah.
we got all the attention. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we still have to do the work, but I
Yeah.
just wish that for everybody, because starting off, it's the hardest thing. The
Yes.
hardest thing.
Yeah.
You have to die to yourself.
Exactly.
You have
It's
to die to
scary.
pride, to ego.
It's scary.
And I know the ego is different for male and women,
Yeah.
So just for you taking that courage,
Yeah.
it's truly commendable.
Thank you. I
Very
appreciate it.
commendable.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, I think we'll finish on that note.
All right.
Thank you, Brandon.
Hey, my pleasure. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. I didn't want you to say too much. You know what I'm saying? We're getting into it.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. How much was it?
It's about 45 minutes.
What?
Oh, really?
You see? Yes. Actually, about 35 minutes.
Okay, it felt like 20.